Hello, grade 12 students! It's a bright new day to learn. Welcome to English for academic and professional purposes. I am Mary Afali, your teacher in today's lesson, Language Used in Academic Texts from Various Disciplines. Before we start, get ready with your pen, activity sheet, and your snack. Let's get started. To start with, let's get to know the objectives of our lesson. First, determine appropriate formal words to supply in sentences. Second, convert informal words to formal ones. Third, identify hedging words or expressions to complete sentences. During your junior high school and grade 11, you have been exposed to different reading and writing activities, which tested your reading and writing skills. How many times have you been assigned to do a book report, reaction paper, research paper, poems, autobiography, and other reading assignments or writing assignments? Have you ever pondered on the differences of these various writing outputs that you have done and texts that you have read? In this lesson, you will learn the nature or features of academic texts, which will enable you to enhance your reading and writing skills. You will learn what to include in your writing and what to avoid. Further, it gives you the opportunity to practice your knowledge of academic vocabulary. Thus, it helps and guide you improve your academic writing style and ability to read academic texts.
Let us now discuss the fundamental differences of academic texts from non-academic texts. Academic texts are written by professionals in a given field, while non-academic texts are written for the mass public. Academic texts take years to publish, while non-academic texts publish quickly and can be written by anyone. In academic texts, the language is formal and are intended for scholarly or academic audience. While for non-academic texts, the language is informal, casual, and may contain slang terms or words. In academic texts, the author or the author's name is present as with their credentials. In non-academic texts, the author or the author's name may not be provided and will not have credentials listed. Sometimes, the author writes anonymously, so there are no credentials provided. Academic texts have citations and lists of references that indicate where the author obtained the information he or she is using in the text. Non-academic texts often do not contain citations and references. There are no references where the author obtained the information. Academic texts use the third-person point of view, which provides objectivity. Non-academic texts use the first or second-person point of view, such as I, we, you, and other personal pronouns. As to content, the content of non-academic text is often a general topic, unlike academic writing, which may focus on a specific field. We have here some examples of academic texts. We have textbooks, scholarly articles, theses and dissertations, reviews, research papers, conference papers, business reports, and other academic papers. Here are examples of non-academic texts. We have newspapers, magazine articles, memoirs, letters, digital media, novels, internet postings, and other non-academic texts. As a general rule, religious texts and newspapers are not considered academic sources. Do not use Wikipedia for an academic source. This website can be altered by anyone, and so any information found within its pages cannot be considered credible or academic. Let us now move on to the focus of our lesson, which is the language used in academic texts. Since we are referring to academic texts, of course, the language is academic in style, or it uses formal language. So let us define first what is academic language. Academic language is the language used in academic texts or academic writing. It is typically used for textbooks, texts in classrooms, and any other discipline related to academic. It is formal, objective, impersonal, and the words and terms are typical to the field. It is very different from the structure of vocabulary and style of everyday conversations, which is informal. The features of academic language ensure that ideas and arguments are communicated in a clear, convincing, and professional manner. In other words, the language used are for academic purposes or in relation to academic courses or subject. You have heard the words formal and informal language for how many times already? So now, let us differentiate formal language from informal language because we will be encountering these words as we go through with our lesson. Formal language tends to be impersonal and precise. Informal language is more casual and spontaneous. Formal language is used when writing for professional or academic purposes, while informal language is used when communicating with friends or family, either in writing or in conversation. And for formal language, it does not use personal pronouns, while informal language is used when writing personal emails, text messages, and in some business correspondence. In formal writing, you may use the passive voice or an adverbial clause in place of the personal pronoun. The tone of informal language is more personal than formal language. Here are examples of informal words with their academic equivalent or its formal words. You may read them silently. As you can see in the examples, the formal or academic equivalent of the informal words are its synonyms. So we can use the synonyms for the informal words. You can make use of a thesaurus to make sure that the word matches closely to the meaning of the word that you want to convey. Make sure that you look up the synonym in the dictionary to ascertain that the meaning is correct and that you are using the appropriate formal or academic equivalent. For example, you would not want to improve your problem when you actually mean to fix it. One of the most important academic writing skills is the ability to write in a formal style. In general, this means that in an academic text, the following are not used or should be avoided. So letter A, do not use abbreviated forms. Examples, can't, doesn't, shouldn't. And B, avoid two-word verbs. Examples, put off, bring up. C, do not use colloquial, trite, and idiomatic expressions. Examples, stuff, a lot of, sort of. And D, do not use subheadings, numbering, and bullet points. Instead, use the formal structure of academic texts, so it has introduction, body, and conclusion. And lastly, avoid asking questions. In formal writing, we do not ask questions, especially rhetorical questions. wherein the answer is obvious or the readers cannot answer. Observe closely this example, especially the words that are in bold letters. The investigation has been going for 4 years. How good has it been? At this stage, researchers can tell because they still need to check out the data to account for differences in age, gender, socioeconomic status, and etc. Once that work is done, though, the information will be really first class. This passage contains some informal words such as going, good, tell, though, really. A rhetorical question, how good has it been? And a contraction, the word can't. A vague category, which is etc. And a colloquialism, which is first class, check out. Again, look closely at this example. We have the original passage and the revised passage. Observe how the words in bold letters are changed in the revised passage. The word going was changed to underway. The rhetorical question, how good has it been, was omitted. Remember that we do not use questions in the formal writing. Next, we have can't, which is a contracted word for cannot. Okay, so can't will be changed to cannot and tell to determine. So can't tell, changed to cannot determine. Another is check out, which was changed to analyze. Then etc., which was changed to other demographic variable. Though, to despite. Then first class, which is a colloquial expression, was changed to highly valuable. Again, how was the original passage revised? Of course, by using the tips mentioned earlier, we could improve the passage by using more formal vocabulary, removing the rhetorical question, writing the words in full, elaborating on the vague category, and removing the colloquialism as seen in this example. As was said earlier, in writing academic texts or informal writing, we avoid contractions or abbreviated words. So what are these contractions? Contractions are two words that are joined together using an apostrophe to replace the missing letters. In academic writing, write the full form of the verb. Okay, so again, avoid contractions. Write or spell words out completely or in full rather than shortening them. For example, instead of writing shouldn't, instead write should not, and can't, cannot, where we are. It's, it is, doesn't, does not. Since academic writing typically has a formal style, contraction should generally be avoided. Instead, spell out the words in full. Look at these sample sentences. The informal ones contain contractions or words that are combined into one word using apostrophe to replace the missing letters. First example, informal sentence. These aren't at all original or exotic, but are based on the ordinary things that most people tend to eat. Formal sentence. These are not at all original or exotic, but are based on the ordinary things that most people tend to eat. Instead of using aren't, use the full form are not. Second example, instead of using doesn't, use does not. Next is avoiding two-word verbs or phrasal verbs. We have here examples of informal words with their formal equivalent. Okay, so to win over, formal equivalent, to persuade, or to convince. Informal, to get back. Formal, to retrieve, regain, or recover. Informal, to say. Formal equivalent, execute. Informal, to put up. Formal equivalent, to endure or to tolerate. We have here sentences wherein the informal two-word verbs were replaced with their formal equivalent. Okay, so we have here an informal sentence. Someone should look into the problem. Formal, the problem should be investigated. Second, informal sentence. The balloon was blown up for the experiment. Formal, the balloon was inflated for the experiment. Can you see the difference? Next is to avoid colloquial language and idiomatic expressions. What are these colloquialisms? Colloquialisms are informal phrases and words, casual or slang terms that might be used in everyday conversations but would not be appropriate in academic or formal writing. So academic writing should be formal, so avoid using colloquialisms or slang terms. Examples, we have guy, cool, awesome, sort of, basically. Okay, for sort of, we can use somewhat, and basically, we can use the word fundamentally. Here are more examples of avoiding colloquial language. As you can see here, we have the informal and formal sentences. First example, instead of using sometime soon, you can use by 2019. Second example, instead of using the colloquial term fridge, you can use the formal term refrigerator. Is to avoid idiomatic expressions. Idioms are part of informal, conversational, or colloquial language. An idiom's message differs greatly from the literal meaning of the words. It should be avoided in academic writing because they lack precision, and its meaning could be misinterpreted by readers with linguistic or cultural backgrounds different to those of the author. In the first example, it is raining cats and dogs. One would not understand its meaning if they have not heard it before or learned it in school. Of course, it has nothing to do with literal cats and dogs. So instead of stating it as it is raining cats and dogs, we could simply write, it is raining heavily. In the second example, the exam is a piece of cake. Surely, we are not referring to the literal piece of cake. Rather, it means that the exam is very easy. And since we are in formal writing, we could revise it as, the exam is somewhat simple. Another feature of academic text or academic writing, aside from being formal, is objective. We say objective because it is based on factual information and arguments. Written language is in general objective rather than personal. Therefore, it has fewer words that refer to the writer or the reader. The main emphasis should be on the information that you want to give and the arguments that you want to make. In general, avoid words such as I, we, you, me, myself. In other words, avoid personal pronouns. A reader will normally assume that any idea not referenced is your own. It is therefore unnecessary to make this explicit, or you need not mention it. Example, instead of using I think or in my opinion, you can use apparently, ideally, or arguably. Take note that in academic writing, it is based on research and not on the writer's own opinion about a given topic. When you write objectively, you are concerned about facts and not influenced by personal feelings or biases. When presenting an argument to the reader, try to show both sides, if you can, and avoid making value judgments. For your writing to be objective, instead of using the word several, use the exact number. Example, 10, 5, 2, and so on and so forth. Instead of using long time ago, use a specific span of time, such as 5 years ago or in 2001. Another, instead of using most of the population, use the exact statistic. Example, 80%, 10%. Or if it is half of the class, use 50%. Again, academic writing does not use personal pronouns such as I, we, you, me, myself, and other personal pronouns. Look closely at these examples. The first sentences are informal ones because they contain personal pronouns and they are in the active voice. In order to make them formal, we have to change them into their passive forms. Observe how the informal sentences were changed into formal ones. As you can see, the personal pronouns were already omitted when changed into their passive forms. Generally, in active sentences, the subject comes before the verb. In passive sentences, the subject comes before the verb. The subject, who is the doer of the action, was already omitted when the sentence was changed into the passive form. Let's take, for example, the first sentence. It is not necessary to write, "The questionnaires was administered yesterday by us," for the sentence to make sense. We can simply write, "The questionnaires was administered yesterday." The same is true with the other examples. Next, avoid vague expressions. Remember that one feature of academic text or academic writing is being concise. And being concise in writing includes avoiding vague expressions or references to persons, places, or things. It is straightforward, so that it eliminates the possibility of the reader misinterpreting the content of writing. Observe this example in in-text citation. According to Sipasio 2014, apostyle is required for business student majors. Note that the source of information is written, so instead of using vague expression, such as according to a reliable source, you write the exact source of information, or the specific reference for the reader to follow. And writing your reference would also make your writing credible. Look at this example. Example number 2. It is informal because it makes use of the words "in my opinion." Okay, so to make it formal, omit "in my opinion." You can just write "this is an interesting study." So it does not use the writer's personal or biased judgment. In example number 3, you can easily forget how different life was 20 years ago. Okay, so avoid "you" to refer to the reader or people in general. So you can just write, "It is easy to forget how difficult life was 20 years ago." Another feature of academic text or academic writing is technical. Academic writing uses vocabulary accurately. Most subjects have words with narrow, specific meanings. In academic writing, you need to be accurate in your use of vocabulary. So choose the appropriate word to be used for that specific discipline. So do not confuse, for example, phonetics and phonology or grammar with syntax. Choose the correct word, for example, meeting, assembly, gathering, or conference. Or from money, cash, currency, capital, or funds. It is technical because there are specific words or vocabulary which are suited for a specific discipline. For example, the word strike. Strike has a different meaning for baseball players and for employees. Also with the word virus. The term virus has a different meaning in natural and applied sciences and also in ICT. Next, we use hedging in academic writing. Hedging words and phrases or cautious language are the things we write and say in order to soften our words, to make them less direct, and to limit our qualified claims and statements we make. In other words, it is necessary to make decisions about your stance on a particular subject or the strength of the claims you are making. It is often believed that academic writing, particularly scientific writing, is factual. However, an important feature of academic writing is the concept of cautious language or hedging. The appropriate use of hedging strategies for academic argumentation is a significant resource for academic writing. You are probably already familiar with hedging in news reports, where journalists have frequent use of the word allegedly, partly because the statements they make are not necessarily proven, and also to create a defense for themselves if confronted about the content of the report, thus protecting themselves from criticism and potential legal action in the process. Let us understand more about hedging or the use of cautious language through examples. Okay, so sentence number 1. It can be concluded that for young adult males, the portrayal of alcohol on a television screen might lead to increased alcohol consumption. Why do you think the answer is concluded? Why not suggested, proven, or estimated? Let's see. The word suggested would not work because the clause, the portrayal of alcohol on a television screen might lead to increased alcohol consumption, is not a suggestion. And the word estimate is also unsuitable because the clause "the portrayal of alcohol on a television screen might lead to increased alcohol consumption" is not a guess. Guesses suggest that there is no evidence. The word "proven" is also unsuitable as this conclusion has not been scientifically proven. The word "might" demonstrates this. So the clue there is in the clause "the portrayal of alcohol on a television screen might lead to increased alcohol consumption." So in this clause, the writer is drawing a logical conclusion, and therefore the word "concluded" is the best fit. Okay? So the answer is concluded. Sentence 2. When in real life, anticipation of others' reactions may be among the causes of imitation. So why is the answer may and not should or could? Let's see. Should is unsuitable because it suggests strong advice. And the sentence is not giving an advice. Could is a possibility, however, it does not highlight the concept of possibility, as well as the word may. So we choose may. Next sentence. However, it is unknown whether the underlying mechanisms differ for food or drink portrayals in the media. Okay, so the answer there is whether, not if, and not that. If could also be used, although it is less favorable than whether because it sounds less formal. That is inappropriate because it does not express the concept of unknown outcomes in the future.
Summary, all that we have learned in today's lesson are the characteristics of academic language. Again, it is formal, objective, and technical. In other words, we do not use abbreviated forms, two-word verbs, colloquial and idiomatic expressions, subheadings, numbering, and bullet points. And we do not ask questions in formal writing. We do not use personal pronouns. Instead, we use the third-person point of view. We use hedging or cautious language. Lastly, we use the appropriate vocabulary for the specific discipline. By now, you are already equipped with the necessary ideas to answer your activity sheet. Read through the text and instructions carefully and answer all the activities in your activity sheet. That's all for today, and see you in our next lesson, only here at DepEd MP TV. Goodbye!